I want to talk to you today about this data set that we're going to use as part of this class. This is a CDC high school survey that looks at youth risk behavior. There are many different risk factors and behavioral factors that this survey gathers data on, and you can see the list to your right. Information is collected throughout the United States and also other areas, including territories like Puerto Rico and Guam. So there's quite a bit of data in this, and that it goes back, at least in this system, until 1997, and is as recent as just a few years ago. So in order to use this data set, it's certainly more limited if you were to, do a data analysis on your own, but it's a nice way of exploring data, and it can be used if you were in a situation where you're writing a grant and need some data, or you want to do some basic research and you want access to this kind of data. So let's just pick something to take a look at. Let's look at alcohol and other drug use. So these here are all the different variables that are questions that they ask on the survey. So we can pick ever used marijuana. So that would be one variable that we can select. So now this takes us to another screen which has a way of looking at all the results. So right now it is showing us a chart that shows marijuana use by gender in the United States, each individual state, certain boroughs and cities, as well as some U.S. territories. What's interesting about this data is that you can compare different demographic factors such as grade level, race, ethnicity, and also gender, to see if there are statistically significant differences between the two. So if we wanted to know if there was a difference between ever using marijuana, which is considered one or more times in their lifetime, if we want to see the difference between males and females, we would click on these boxes here and then click on Compare To. And this data processing takes a little bit of time, but what it will show is whether or not there's a difference between male and female marijuana use, and it will show it on the United States level, but also, in the different states levels. So while that's loading, I just want to pay attention to some of the things up here. So it says question direction. So what this means is that it will ask the question which will demonstrate the greater amount of risk. So the number shown is the higher risk as opposed to less risk. The decimal place means just after the number how many decimal places there are. And the confidence interval is 95%. So this is the standard confidence interval that you will see in social survey research. And so the cell size is how many people are populating that cell. So let's look here. So this is for ever used marijuana in the United States. So all the females in this survey from grades 9 through 12 of all races are represented here. So the total number is 6,510 females have been represented as indicating that they have used marijuana. So that represents 39% of females. Now here, the males, 6,729 males said they had ever used marijuana. So what we want to know is we can see that there's a difference between male and female use of marijuana. But what we want to know is whether that difference is actually statistically significant. So that's where we have the p-value. So if the p-value is less than 0.05, then it is statistically significant. So you can see here that males are more likely than females in the United States to have smoked marijuana ever in their lifetime. So we see the difference, and now we know that this difference is significant. So if we wanted to do a research study and talk about male and female marijuana use, we could show this as a statistic that shows that males are more likely than females to have ever used marijuana in high school. So as we go down, we can see between the states, there are not necessarily statistically significant differences. So let's take Alabama. So the female percentage is 31.5%, okay? And the male percentage is 37.2. So the male number, percentage-wise, looks higher than the female. So it's making you think, oh, well, that's true, that males are more likely to have used marijuana in their lifetime in Alabama. But what we see in the p-value is it's higher than 0.05. So this chart indicates there's not a significant difference between males and females in Alabama. And we can scale down and look at all the different states to see whether or not there is a significant gender difference between males and females in smoking marijuana. So this is just one way of looking at the data. Let's choose another one. Let's change our variable. So we go up to here where it says question. Let's look at intentional injuries and violence. And let's do drinking and driving. Now let's choose something that's not so age dependent. How about weapon carrying at school? Okay, and let's look at weapon carrying over time. So we're going to do all years. And let's see if it will do totals only for us. Sometimes, if you're not familiar with how to use a data analysis tool like this, it's a good idea to just see if, let's give it a shot and see what happens. So we're trying to see if there's a difference between over the years on weapons carrying. Okay, so let's look at the United States data as a whole. So here in 1993, 11.8% of high school students reported carrying a weapon on school property. This is the operational definition of it. It's the question, such as a gun, a knife, a club, on at least one day during the last 30 days before the survey. So that's how they asked the question. So we can see in 93, 11.8% of students reported carrying a weapon on school property. Now, as we look over time, what do we see? We see the numbers going down, down, right? So they look like they've really gone down. Let's see if there's a difference between 2013 and 1993. So it would be interesting to know over the past 20 years if there's a difference. So let's compare the two. Okay, here's the findings. Okay, so in 1993, 11.8% of high school students, which is 16,110 people, responded that they had carried a weapon on school property. And in 2013, 5.2% reported they carried a weapon. So the p-value is definitely less than 0.05 because it is 0.00. So you can see that in 1993, 20 years ago, students were much more likely to carry a weapon on school property. So that would be interesting if you wanted to do a study on school violence and talk about school violent trends, because this would be able to elucidate that statistically, kids are carrying less weapons now than they did 20 years ago. So there's lots of things you can also do with this. You can choose a specific state if you'd like, and you could just look at 1 year, and then you can, let me hit go, And then here you can look at different variables. So you could have the totals of all groups if you want, or you could look at it by grade. So let's see if grade makes a difference for carrying a weapon to school. So let's hit go. Let's see. So this is Connecticut. And so ninth graders were 5.2% of them reported carrying a weapon. 10th graders, 4.9. 11th graders, 7.7. And 12th graders, 8%. So let's see if there's a difference between 9th and 12th graders. We're going to compare the two. So one of the things that you might have for a hypothesis is that older students are more likely to carry a weapon. And then we do this analysis because we go, okay, well look, this is 0.8 and this is 8.0 and this is 5.2. But look what happens with the p-value. The p-value is higher than 0.05, so there isn't a statistical difference between those two groups. So what this demonstrates is that even though you have a visible difference in the percentages, it's not a statistically significant difference. So this is a really fun tool to play around with. And so when you're developing your hypothesis and your IVs and your DVs, your IVs can either be representing a change in time, or it can represent a demographic variable like grade, race, or sex. So I encourage you to spend some time running some different analysis and getting a feel for it.